After being reborn, the MC gains a terrifyingly powerful ability. Whatever he imagines becomes real. He can heal wounds just by picturing them healed, create the perfect body without a single workout, cast elemental magic simply by imagining himself doing so, and summon any weapon or artifact with a thought. The only drawback is that his power is imperfect at first, and must be leveled to. Thankfully, he reincarnates as a student at a magic academy, giving him plenty of time to refine his ability and prepare his revenge against those responsible for his previous death. Years earlier, the world had been thrown into chaos when mysterious dungeon gates appeared worldwide, spewing out monsters humanity couldn't stop. Only those who awakened magical powers could fight back, and among them stood the Golden Seekers, Ingolf Fanditz, Claudia Bourdieu, Nathaniel Cavell, Iwako Hideki, and Leruaki. These 5 superhumans defended humanity from the strongest threats, but their heroism was hardly pure. When a normal man gets cornered by an ogre, Ingolf orders Claudia to save him, but she can't be bothered to even move. Just as the man is about to die, the monster's face caves in from a kick delivered by the final and strongest member, their leader, Misato Kyo. Smiling, he tells the civilians to stay calm, and launches himself toward the remaining monsters. A massive surge of energy erupts from his hand as he plows through the horde like a living wrecking ball. The other Golden Seekers can only stare, knowing this display is nothing surprising. Masato's time magic lets him see the future, predicting every attack before it happens, make him a godlike warrior no longer comparable to humans. Within minutes, the battlefield is a graveyard of monsters. With the final enemy crushed, Masato begins sealing the dungeon gate to restore peace. But the moment the seal completes, a violent shockwave hurls him deep into the dungeon, trapping him behind his own barrier. Outside, instead of panicking or helping, his 5 teammates simply watch, completely unfazed by their leader's disappearance. Even with his power to see the future, Masato has never witnessed a timeline like that. He approaches the sealed barrier and demands to know whether his teammates planned this betrayal together, and why. Their reasoning is simple and cruel. While he risked everything to save people, they only wanted fame and money. His power continued to grow, a level 100 warrior wielding time magic, while they remained stagnant. Jealous and afraid, they decided it was time to trap him and take control of the world themselves, free from his heroic interference. Laughing, they walk away from the man who once carried them to victory. Masato slams his fists against the seal, screaming for rescue, but they never look back. Their betrayal stings deeper than any wound. He only ever wanted to protect humanity, not overshadow his comrades. Before he can make sense of this heartbreak, an overwhelming surge of monsters emerges from the darkness. His instincts kick in, and he prepares to fight, but the dungeon seems endless, and more powerful enemies appear by the second. He uses his future sight to search for any timeline where he survives, but every path ends in death. His destiny has already been severed. Still, he refuses to die screaming. Summoning his remaining strength, he charges forward with a blazing golden fist, determined to change fate with sheer force. Hundreds of monsters fall in a single assault, but thousands more trample toward him like a tidal wave of nightmare. Kneeling in a pool of his own blood, Masato finally accepts that death is unavoidable. But if this is his final moment, he swears it will not be meaningless. As the horde crushes him beneath their weight, he pours the last fragments of his magic into one final act, forcing his time attribute to trigger his reincarnation. If he can return stronger, then someday, he'll reach the absolute peak and ensure this betrayal is paid back in full. Once Masato is reborn, he swears that one day he will crush every traitor who abandoned him to die, letting his rage and despair grow until the moment of vengeance arrives. With one final surge of magic, he unleashes live manipulation and floods the dungeon in a radiant golden flash. When his eyes open again, he finds himself in a much younger body, lying in an unfamiliar hospital. Groggy, he rises from the bed and examines his reflection. A youthful face, short hair, completely different from his former self. Touching the mirror, he confirms that his reincarnation was a success. The room is stocked with medical tools he doesn't recognize, indicating many years have passed since his death. He hopes the traitors are still alive so he can personally repay their betrayal. On a nearby table, he spots a student ID belonging to the original owner of this body. Judged by the date, around 20 years have gone by, meaning his revenge window remains wide open. The boy's name was Asai Osuke, and the ID reveals he possessed the rare Void attribute at level 1. That discovery makes Masato laugh darkly at the twist of fate. In his previous life, he was worshipped and feared for wielding time magic, but he eventually hit a ceiling because even clairvoyants couldn't grasp the limitless nature of void magic. And now, this new vessel has that very attribute, the most mysterious and potentially strongest magic in existence. Masato almost pities Osuke, knowing the boy was likely mocked as powerless since no one understands how to develop void magic. That's why he remains stuck at level 1. Now fully aware of the situation, Masato vows to honor the boy who lost his life, promising to make his name known across the world as the greatest adventurer in history. Using his old clairvoyance knowledge, he knows exactly how to train void magic and exploit its true potential. Once he transforms this weak teenage body into something unstoppable, he will hunt down the 5 traitors and make them regret ever touching him. But first he must break through level 1. Even though he surpassed everyone in his past life, this time he's starting from scratch. The Void attribute, the power of nothingness, allows the user to manifest imagination into reality itself. And with that ability in his grasp, his revenge has only just begun. Everyone to imagine things, but actual turning imagination into reality is where the true challenge begins. Fortunately for Masato, the body he has taken over is in rough shape, which makes it the perfect test subject for his new power. All he needs to do is picture his wounds disappearing, and enforce that mental image onto his body. By focusing, he visualizes each cell being restored by magic. He starts with his arm, channeling the Void attribute into it, and slowly the ugly bruise begins to fade. The healing is basic for now. The surface repairs faster than the deeper tissue, but the progress is enough to make him confident. If he keeps healing his injuries day after day, his level will gradually rise, and the more he uses the Void attribute, the stronger and broader its effects will become. Eventually, he'll be able to manifest more complex creations from his imagination, countless types of magic, powerful constructs, even weapons, until his mental images can be flawlessly realized in the physical world. As he considers how terrifyingly strong he could become, the door suddenly slams open. A doctor rushes in, stunned to see Masato awake. Masato tries to sit up, but the doctor quickly pushes him back down, insisting he shouldn't move after nearly being killed by a monster. This is the first time Masato learns what happened to the former owner of this body. Apparently, he was so badly injured that waking up at all is considered a miracle. The doctor babbles that it must be the blessing of this. Meanwhile, Masato already knows the truth. The real miracle is the terrifying power now under his control. That was the first time Masato had ever heard mention of the saints, yet to the doctor the name was common knowledge. The man was incredulous that Masato didn't know who they were. They called themselves the Pentagram Saints. Masato had no clue. The doctor blamed his ignorance on the fact that he'd only just regained consciousness after sustaining near-fatal injuries, then shifted gears to perform a full examination. Left alone, Masato couldn't stop thinking about the Pentagram Saints, some powerful clan or adventurer group that must have risen during the 20 years he'd been out. While he focused on leveling his Void skill, he realized he also needed to catch up on 2 decades of history. He grabbed the remote from the bedside table and flipped to a news channel. A special report about the S-class dungeon disaster from 20 years ago happened to be airing exactly the context he needed to learn what had happened after his betrayal. The broadcast named the culprit, the leader of the Golden Seat, Misato Kyoyo. Misato lurched out of bed when his own face filled the screen. He listened, stunned. The report claimed he foresaw the catastrophe but refused to warn anyone, planning instead to exploit the chaos to seize power. Supposedly, the other Golden Seekers united to stop him. After defeating Misato, they rebranded themselves the Pentagram Saints and sealed the dungeon, then parlayed that manufactured victory into global influence. This lie had become accepted fact. The Saints were now celebrated leaders across many fields. Misato shut off the TV and stared out the window, outrage bubbling into uncontrollable laughter as the truth crystallized. Not only had they betrayed him, they'd smashed his name and stolen his honor, then capitalized on his sacrifice. Now they were worshipped, while he lay forgotten. He vowed he would make them pay one by one, but forced himself to breathe. He couldn't rush headlong into revenge yet. In his current, weakened state, he'd be detected and crushed. First he would grow, then he would hunt them down. The first task is figuring out where the traitors are and how he can reach them. Using the boy's phone, he browses through the data to learn which academy he attends. Just as he suspected, it's Toko Adventurer Training Academy, overseen by none other than Iwako Hide of the Pentagram Saints. He hasn't even fully adjusted to his new life yet and he's already located one of the enemies. However, Iwako is a vigilant man who never exposes any weakness, and with the current massive power gap between them, defeating him now would be impossible. For the moment, Misato must focus on leveling up and growing stronger. At level 1 he is far too weak to act, but once his abilities reach a reasonable threshold, Iwako will become his first target. Weeks pass, and Misato makes a full recovery, preparing to leave the hospital. The doctor is shocked by his rapid healing, convinced once again that it's thanks to the saint's blessing. But Misato cuts him off sharply. Everything he has gained so far is purely the result of his own power. With that, he bids a final farewell and steps outside. Having completed the foundational steps of his plan, he is ready to move forward, and has even raised his level to 27. Now it is time for a warm-up, a dungeon run to test his combat capabilities. Before he left, he overheard that Kagi's family died in an accident. Tragic for the boy, but convenient for Misato. With no family left, no one will question anything he does. Leaving the hospital behind, he heads straight toward the nearest dungeon gate to begin his first real mission in this new life. To achieve the revenge he desires, he must push his level higher as quickly as possible. He's healed his way to this point, and now it's time to unlock his true power through battle. He heads to the stall by the gate, shows his student ID, and the guard reaches out to stop him. The man's worried. Masato is only level 27, and this dungeon usually requires adventurers to be at least level 30 to form party and enter. To the guard, Masato going in alone is basically suicide. That rule would hold for anyone with a normal class, but Masato is a student of the Tokyo Adventurer Training Academy, and that status grants him special entry privileges even into hazardous areas. As long as he signs the consent form, the rules allow him access without a party. Masato had anticipated the objection and already checked the academy's special provision. This was one of them. The guard reluctantly lets him pass, though his anxiety doesn't vanish. From the compound's edge, a pack of thuggish kids jeer that the guard is only fussing because Masato is a weak academy student who hasn't even graduated yet, and he should know his place. Masato barely glances at them, then turns back to the guard and asks where to sign. After he inks the form, he confirms there are no further complications and steps through the gate. The guard watches him go, then calls the kids over and orders them to follow Masato into the dungeon. He still can't shake the feeling that letting a kid walk in there unprotected is courting disaster, but the boys quickly argue among themselves. None wants to risk their necks for someone they don't know. Their leader, however, shuts them down. This could work out in their favor. If no one watches what they do inside the dungeon, they can take whatever opportunities come up without consequences. Even if something awful happens, they reason, no one outside will be able to pin anything at them. His so-called friends instantly grasp his intentions and eagerly charge into the dungeon after Masato. Now they believe they can finally get revenge for his arrogance, and for attempting a dungeon far above his rank. The guard happily waves them through, completely oblivious to their real motive. This is not their first time doing something like this. They lure adventurers inside, murder them, and pin the blame on the monster. In doing so, they fill their own pockets with profit while no one suspects a thing. With that malicious plan in mind, they sprint deeper into the dungeon in pursuit of Masato. However, after nearly 10 minutes of running, they still have not caught up. The dungeon corridor is completely linear, so there is no possible way they should have lost him. Confusion grows as they wonder how he traveled so far ahead. When they finally reach him, Masato is completely surrounded by hordes of monsters. At first, they assume they may not have to deal with him at all, since the creatures should finish him off. Yet Masato instantly proves them wrong by combining fire and wind magic, annihilating every D-rank monster within moments. They are stunned that he single-handedly defeated such a large group, although their attention quickly shifts to the enormous pile of loot left behind. Selling all of that would allow them to live in luxury for 6 months at least. Masato's back remains facing them, so they think he has not noticed their presence. To them, it is the perfect chance to strike him down and steal every rare drop for themselves. The three immediately surround him and launch a barrage of spells from all directions. Masato finally turns his gaze toward them, smoothly evading every attack without wasting a single movement. He has dealt with this kind of scum countless times in his previous life. No matter the era, there will always be parasites who try to take what others have earned. Realizing their distance attacks failed, one of them gathers a fireball and rushes in. Aiming to end Masato with a magically strengthened punch, Misato reacts faster. He coats his fist in ice and drives it into the attacker's stomach, sending the man crashing back into his companions in an instant. One enemy is defeated and left groaning on the ground, while Masato calmly advances toward the remaining two, who now tremble in fear. In this new life, he refuses to show the same mercy he once did. Anyone who stands in his path will be crushed and turned into nothing more than a stepping stone for his ascent. Everything he intends to do from this point forward exists solely to achieve his revenge. With the thugs dealt with, Misato exits the dungeon completely unscathed. However, the sudden disappearance of the boys prompts an academy instructor to investigate. This man serves under Iwako Yoichi and received a report that one of his students had entered the dungeon alone. Instead of discovering a struggling student, he finds 3 novice adventurer hunters lying dead on the floor. There are no traces or clues left behind that could reveal what transpired inside. Meanwhile, Misato reviews his updated status after clearing the dungeon. Completing a D-rank dungeon allowed him to level up and simultaneously test his void magic. He has now unlocked a new spell called Info Obscurity, a technique that not only conceals his level but also erases any dungeon entry record. Through this ability, he can eliminate every piece of evidence in the D-rank dungeon that might connect the incident to him. With that settled, he turns his attention to the upcoming day. Tomorrow marks his first official day at the academy, and preparation is necessary. He scrolls through Kioski's phone and discovers numerous unread messages from individuals who have clearly been harassing him, using violence to extort money. That perfectly clarifies the suffering Kioski endured and why he was left in such a miserable condition. The next morning he arrives at school. As he steps through the front gate, a cheerful girl greets him, clearly familiar with Kioski. This is Asahi Karin, his classmate, and she rushes over to ask about his condition after his hospitalization. Despite his hardships, Kioski evidently had at least a few people genuinely concerned for him. While they converse, a group of bullies approaches. They mock him for possessing no attribute and openly acknowledge that he barely survived his last encounter with death. These are almost certainly the same individuals responsible for those threatening messages he saw the previous night. The leader walks forward and demands that Kioski hand over money as payment for their so-called protection. It is obvious that they intend to start a fight. What is your thought? Are you Estelle out really quickly? Said Starletter de Toring. On the tag-I-rolled was Bretam Khan. Although she attempts to appear courageous, her trembling hands reveal just how frightened she truly is. The protagonist notices her fear and calmly steps in front of her, assuring her that everything will be fine. The bullies burst into laughter, convinced that he is only trying to impress a girl. Since he is so eager to act tough, They are more than ready to remind him of his place in the school's food chain. Unfortunately for them, they have not yet realized that the hierarchy changed the moment Masato took control of this body. He made a vow to the boy whose life he inherited, promising to spread his name across the world as the greatest adventurer. Masato sees himself as someone who always honors a promise. He provokes the first bully, and the taunt works flawlessly, pushing the boy into casting a spell at Masato. Using magic outside of designated dungeon areas violates academy regulations, but these bullies clearly do not care. They believe they must punish anyone with no attribute who dares to resist. The bully hurls a fireball at him, and Masato immediately responds by conjuring one of his own, far larger and hotter. The spells collide mid-air, erupting into a powerful blast, leaving the bullies stunned that Kagi can suddenly wield fire magic. Masato is barely affected by their weak attempts. The leader snarls at his companions to stop standing around like background characters and join the fight. They quickly release wind and water spells toward Masato. Again, he counters them effortlessly with stronger techniques of the same elements. They struggle to comprehend how someone known as attributeless is now displaying multiple magical affinities at once. They have never heard of such an ability before, yet this is only the beginning. Until now, Masato has simply mirrored their powers to cancel out their attacks. It is time for him to take the offensive. A gigantic fireball forms behind him, radiating heat and power that sends all three bullies into a panic. As they scramble to escape, Masato calmly approaches and seizes the nearest one by the collar while the boy screams and attempts to flee. Masato asks whether this boy ever offered Kiyaka help when he desperately needed it. He provides no opportunity for a reply. Instead, he grips the bully's face firmly and lifts him off the ground, channeling an immense fireball into his other fist. He already knows the answer. People like this always make the same excuses, and none of them matter. No words will prevent the inevitable. Masato's fist slams into the boy's face with overwhelming force, launching him backward and leaving him unconscious in the middle of the academy courtyard. Concurring. It is obvious that something about him has completely changed. Kioski will no longer be a victim for worthless nobodies to bully. From now on, he intends to walk the path toward becoming the strongest adventurer. After witnessing Misato's overwhelming strength, the bullies begin to plead for mercy. They hurriedly pick up their unconscious friend and stumble out of the courtyard, still in disbelief that Kioski has become an entirely different person after his release from the hospital. Misato merely sighs in disappointment. After all the big talk, the bully turned out to be laughably weak. He walks into the school alongside Karin, fully aware that every student saw what happened. Dozens of eyes follow him as he passes, accompanied by startled whispers. Misato notices the attention and wonders whether he attracted too much notice by showing off. Before he reaches his classroom, someone pushes through the crowd to intercept him. Yotsudai approaches with clear urgency, stopping Kioski before he can open the door. Kioski does not recognize him, though the boy's appearance suggests that he is a senior student. Dealing with him would be a hassle, so Kioski casually tries to brush him off, claiming that class is about to start. Yoti refuses to be dismissed. He introduces himself as the leader of Biting the Cat, a special clan personally created by Principal Iwako for the academy. That single detail makes Kioski freeze mid-movement, his hand hovering over the classroom door handle. Seeing that he finally has Kioski's attention, Yoichi politely asks again if he would spare a moment to talk. Given the new context, Kioski immediately agrees. They move to a quiet spot, and Yoichi wastes no time. He directly asks Keys whether he is responsible for defeating the adventurers who were recently discovered dead in the D-rank dungeon. Misato acts clueless, though internally he is unsettled that the information he worked so carefully to hide has leaked. Yoichi explains that the academy staff reported a student entering that dungeon alone, so he went to investigate. Inside, he found the corpses of notorious criminals known for preying on low-rank novices. Furthermore, less than 10 minutes ago, Kioski demonstrated multiple elemental attributes in combat against other students. While Yoichi's statements are correct, his manner of presenting them makes it clear that he does not actually understand the true nature of Misato's magic capability.